Hey, it's Alex Williams of the New Stack. Welcome to the New Stack Makers, a podcast where we talk about application development, deployment, and management at scale. The Cloud Foundry Foundation is our sponsor for these podcasts that we did from the Cloud Foundry Summit in Boston, Massachusetts. Cloud Foundry is used by enterprises around the globe to automate, scale, and manage cloud applications throughout their life cycle. Learn more about Cloud Foundry at cloudfoundry.org.
All right, this is Libby Clark. I'm editorial director at the New Stack, and I'm live here at Cloud Foundry Summit in Boston with Sylvain Kalache, who is the co-founder of the Holberton School in the Bay Area. Welcome, Sylvain.
Thank you, Libby.
We're going to talk today a little bit about training for a new generation of developers in IT operations for these new tools. And so let's start off with first, what is Holberton School and how are you involved in training?
So Holberton School is a 2-year alternative to college. We are training full-stack software engineer. With a very different approach to education. We are a project-based and peer learning-based education, meaning that we have no formal teachers, no lectures. Students learn by practicing, working on projects, and collaborating with their peers. So to give you an idea on how it works in regular education, we kind of give you the solution, through a lecture, and then you need to memorize the solution, and then we give you the exam, right? At Holberton, we do the opposite. We give the students the exam, which is a project, and then we give them little guidance, and then it's up to them to go learn the knowledge and the tools that they need to, build and achieve the task.
So who are your students then? They're working in the industry already, or are they're retraining from different careers, or?
Yeah, it's a mix. So we have students who are out of high school, who are like 18 years old and want to get started. We have students who, started college, dropped out of college, or had a bachelor in other, major. Some people had a career. Some of my most seasoned students is 56. Most of them come with no prior experience in software engineering. So it's mostly training, sometimes a bit of retraining. And actually we have a quite diverse population of students. In terms of, I would say, visual diversity, we have 35% women, which is like amazing, in the industry. 50% of our students are non-white. And the walks of life, as I mentioned, goes anywhere from existing workers to high school graduates. And I think this diversity is due to the fact that there is no upfront tuition, meaning that students don't pay anything while they are studying at Holberton. We invest in their education, and then when they find a job, they contribute back with a percentage of their salary. So that opens up the opportunity to a lot of students who otherwise could not have access to high-quality education.
So what's your connection to the companies in the Bay Area? You said that you have engineers working within the industry already. So who are some of the companies that they're working for, and why are they coming back for training?
So a lot of so my students, when they come to Holberton, they have no prior knowledge in software engineering. The program's 2 years, but you can start working after 9 months. And we have students working for all type of Silicon Valley companies.
So they get a job right away, like after 9 months, before they even finish school?
Yeah, a lot of them find a job before the 9 months.
Yeah.
Some of them want to do the 2 years. It depends, I guess like the students who are 18, they want to go the full 2 years, and maybe students who are a bit more seasoned, they want to work as soon as possible. It depends kind of what's your ambition and what's kind of the plan. So students work for any type of company, not only in Silicon Valley, mostly in Silicon Valley. It goes anywhere from small companies 2 employees to large companies with 10,000 plus. So among the most famous companies we have Tesla, Apple, NASA, Dropbox, IBM, Nvidia, Docker, you name it. So a large variety of company, and many students are competing with Ivy League type of talent. like the Apple and Tesla and LinkedIn of the world. So ultimately, the training seems to be working quite well.
And I assume that they have a huge need to train developers. So what are some of the trends that you're seeing in the industry that are kind of fueling your business as an educator?
Yeah, so I used to be a software engineer, a DevOps site reliability engineer working for LinkedIn. My co-founder Julien Barbier was working for Docker, and we are both seeing the lack of highly skilled software engineer, and we would interview a lot of folks coming out of college and not being ready, to take on the job, right? And according to the previous, US CTO Megan Smith, like the lack of software engineer is gonna grow. Today we are at more than 5,600,000 unfilled positions that require tech talent in the US only. It should grow to 1.4 million within the next decade. The university are scheduled to train 400,000, so there is 1 million unfilled position that needs talent. Like, so basically someone needed to come to train them, and we want to be part of the solution. One of the issues with education in the US is like the costs and kind of the academic criteria that you need to access, like high quality education. So if you don't have this perfect academic life, then you can pretend to go in this top university who oftentimes are in the business of scarcity. So, they cannot enroll a lot of students. High quality education doesn't scale. What's great with Holberton is that we don't rely on teachers, but on peers and software, which are two things that scales. And so we'll be able to train a lot of software engineers. We actually just raised a Series A of 8 million that will allow us to train 500 students per year, which is going to be a campus of 1,000 students. So,
which is still a long way short of 1 million, right?
It is. It is indeed. So we started 2 years ago.
How do you scale training then? I mean, that's the issue, right?
Yeah. So if you think about it, like regular education is based on like lecture-based learning, right, which require teachers. It's very hard to find a good teacher. It's very hard to find a good software engineer. Imagine how hard it is to find a good software engineer who wants to be a teacher, right? It's super tough. So this type of education doesn't scale. And on top of this, because it's a lot of theory-based, students, they memorize things, but they are not, really ready to take on a job. They don't learn tools that are used in the industry, such as Cloud Foundry tools, that will make them, productive from day one. The difference with Holberton is that we have no formal teachers. We have no lecture. I will never say, hey, Libby, sit here for 8 hours. Let me tell you how to use Cloud Foundry. We won't do this. For instance, we'll say, hey, Libby, I want you to, so you built a website. Let's say you did a Holberton School. You developed Airbnb clone, or the new stack. You developed the website, the new stack. And I want you to deploy your website on the cloud, right? And the requirement is that you need to use Cloud Foundry. And then we give little guidance to students, and then they have anywhere from a day to several days to a week to basically learn, let's say, the Cloud Foundry tool to basically build a project out of this, right? And then there is students, together they work like in groups to achieve this. And because we have a new cohort every 3 months, you have senior students who have already done the project. We can help the junior students, and then staff on site if you are really stuck, to help you.
So something that we've been hearing a lot over the past few days at Cloud Foundry Summit is that Cloud Foundry makes the developer experience easy for cloud deployments. What is the role of the software in training? I mean, can you create software that's so easy that you can just bring a developer onto your team that's new to the team and they can just learn it really quickly? Or, do you have to have training in addition to making software easier?
So is it within the school context or within the company context?
Well, I'm thinking specifically within the company context, solving that problem of training new developers. Yeah.
So I think automation in general is something that, makes the work easier, right?
Yeah.
Software is like obviously enabling that, and in general, the cloud industry and the DevOps methodology is into making the relation between software engineer and operation folks, which are like DevOps or SRE or system administrator easier, right? So we use one of the tools is called CI/CD, continuous integration, continuous development, which is about having this like shipping pipe that's about when someone writes a piece of code, it goes through a series of tests and process that goes from testing, making sure the code is stable and reliable, and then being pushed to staging and then production kind of seamlessly, right? And so Cloud Foundry is like one of the tools like this CI/CD kind of toolbox that makes the life of software engineer easier. And basically this type of tool is like adding a level of abstraction on the complexity of what is like below, and what we used to do manually now is done automatically. So, ultimately, like managing your cloud and, whether it's multi-cloud or one cloud or infrastructure is not the value of a company. Like the value of a company is to build a product, right, to serve its customers, right? So I think ultimately managing this type of complexity does not have value, and so that's why that I think this type of tool will continue to grow.
So how much do developers really need to know about the infrastructure then if they're using a tool like Cloud Foundry?
So I think there are two types. The one that kind of like take advantage of Cloud Foundry and like software engineer, who build the application and then use the tool to deploy the application, and they don't need to know a lot about. I mean, they need to know about their craft, their main role, which is software development, building a product, and then they need to know a little about the specific of what's a cloud, what's Cloud Foundry, how it works, and how I can leverage it to deploy my code. And then you have the people who are putting in place Cloud Foundry and ultimately managing the tool and the infrastructure, which are often called DevOps or SRE or system administrator, operation folks that need to know software development and operation, right? Which is actually a very tough type of profile to find, because you need this like large skill toolbox that most of the CS program, at least in the US, is not teaching.
They train you for one or the other, not both.
And actually, yeah, most of the time is not the other. Like operation is generally something not taught at school. It's like mostly computer science, like most of the time, sometimes also software engineering. And actually that's something we do at Holberton School, is that we have and computer science, software engineering, soft skills, and also operation, which is when a lot of my students end up being SREs or DevOps, whichever term you want to use. We have people working for Apple at SRE, at LinkedIn, Dropbox, Docker, and so on. So and I think, like, when you look at the Cloud Foundry survey, it's about 42% of their users define themselves as DevOps, right? So, and GitHub came up with this survey that said that 10% of software engineers are DevOps. So it's like, still a small proportion. For Cloud Foundry, it's very key, as their user. Yet, DevOps, software engineers are the second best paid among developers, right? So there is a huge need. And I think that we need to see like what's the key to that, like what's like ultimately the cloud adoption could be limited, and slowed down by the lack of talent.
So that's an industry trend that you're seeing then, that SRE role.
Oh yeah,
more demand from companies for hiring that particular role. Yeah,
there is a huge demand. I mean, today, like, I think it's like around 96% of companies use the cloud. But now, like, the sophistication of the cloud is like the type of use is being more sophisticated, and you need software engineer to be able to handle that. I went to SRECon a few years ago. For several years, every time, like, on the table is like, hey, how do we either find talent, and how do we train talent internally. So a lot of companies are like thinking, hey, we cannot find DevOps talent, so let's train them internally in the company. That's obviously costly, and most of the time that's not kind of the role of an organization to have a training center within the organization, but sometimes they just don't have the choice.
Yeah, that's something that I've heard a lot on the show floor, actually, from different companies, saying that the vendors who are presenting here are saying that that's something that their customers are grappling with right now. Is like they're trying to implement DevOps within their own organizations. It's usually kind of a small, or a small subset of their team. They're trying to figure out how to expand it. So how do you approach that as an educator and as a trainer? Do you say, send all of your devs to me? But are there things that you can do within your organization,
So we are not in ultimately we are not in corporate training. That's not something we do, at least yet.
Yeah.
But what we do is that the curriculum that is used at Holberton is built by the school, but also in collaboration with mentors who are professionals working in the tech industry. And so when we design it and when we update it, we constantly talk to them to make sure that what's being learned by students is appropriate with what's needed in the industry, which is a big reason why operation is being learned at Holberton School, because there is a huge need. And it's not because I made it up, it's because I chat with my mentors who are software engineer or like CTO executive or a hiring manager, and who tell me, hey Sylvain, we need this type of talent, right? So I think that in this sense, that's kind of our answer, is that we, like regular education institution, will like have their own curriculum, their academic staff, and will kind of like go with their own feelings, and it's like very closed, like we are in constant like discussion with the industry, and mentors come to the school to advise on the curriculum, but also share their experience with students to make sure that they understand what they are getting into. And ultimately hire our students, because they know the curriculum, they've contributed to it, they know the quality of the education, they know the students, so that it's like the right fit for them to, the obvious thing for them to hire our talent. So I think this trend is not going to slow down. Like the cloud adoption DevOps methodology, it's the methodology of like automating this process is obviously accelerating. I would say that for small organization, you can get away with not having a DevOps person, but the more your organization grow, the more the company will feel the need.
Can you talk a little bit about the skills that you see a greater need for now, as like cloud migration and now cloud native migration is happening? I mean, and it's happening so fast. How do you even identify what those in-demand skills are? So what are the skills, and how do you identify what's coming around the bend?
Yeah. So I think the beauty and the issue of the tech industry is that it's constantly changing. It's constantly evolving. The tools that you need to use, the tools itself are changing, and so I believe that a great software engineer will know the fundamentals of software engineering and like the fundamental concept, right, that you need to know. And then once you have the fundamental, talent can pretty much adapt. Like if they're able to learn by themselves, right? Like, so we went from bare metal machine to virtual machine to container to serverless, PaaS, but ultimately like it's just adding layer of abstraction on, to make people life easier.
So are you teaching serverless?
We are not.
Why not?
Well, yeah, that's a very good question.
Yeah.
So one of the trick is that everybody will say, hey, like I use Java, you must teach Java. I use Hamburg.js or the latest JavaScript framework or the latest container technology or the latest orchestration tool. The thing is that basically the program is only 2 years. The most important part of the curriculum is on the first 9 months. And there is only so much time, we only have so much time, right? And the tools that are in demand then can be picked up by the student very quickly, because by learning by doing, like not only they learn the craft, but also they develop self-learning mechanism, right? So we give them project, and they are the one getting the knowledge, learning the tool that they need to achieve the project. So by doing so, they develop this ability to learn by themselves that then they can reuse, like, all along their career and when they join a company, right? So let's say a company was using Docker, and now they switched, let's say they learned Docker or Vagrant or whatever it is, and then they go to a company and they need to learn Cloud Foundry. A lot of the concepts are similar, right? So it's not an issue that we are not teaching a specific tools. The most important is fundamental plus ability to learn.
Right, okay. Yeah, I mean, so tell me why you're at Cloud Foundry Summit.
Yeah, so I think the first reason is that I want to stay up to date as a former SRE and DevOps engineer. I'm heading this part of the curriculum at Holberton, and I used to work at LinkedIn as a DevOps SRE engineer, so I used to know what's up, but it's been 2 years that I started Holberton School, and now I'm focusing on education. I'm kind of a dinosaur, in the cloud space. I don't know what's up. Obviously, I have a lot of mentors, educating me and us and building with the curriculum, but I want kind of to stay in touch with the industry. And I think the second thing is that we just discussed of this lack of talent, and cloud talent is very tough to find, right? And you have huge companies using Cloud Foundry who are struggling to find the talent needed, as I mentioned, to basically leverage Cloud Foundry. And so
you're not teaching Cloud Foundry in particular?
Well, we are not, but
yeah.
the main component of Cloud Foundry, what Cloud Foundry is doing, is taught at Holberton. So then, Cloud Foundry, basically I teach my students how to build something without Cloud Foundry, so that when they use Cloud Foundry, they understand what's the magic behind it. Mm-hmm. Right? That's very important that you know what Cloud Foundry is doing behind the hood. Right? It's fine to use Cloud Foundry, but you need to understand the fundamentals. But I want to go to this large company and say, hey, my students are trained on software engineering and operation, and could be a fit to your hiring needs. We are 2-year alternative to college, so we are not accredited. We are not a formal 4-year degree, and I think a lot of companies are focusing on, hey, if you don't have a formal 4 or 5-year degree, then you don't fit the requirements. If Tesla and Apple and LinkedIn and NASA hire my students, I guess we are doing something right. Mm-hmm. And I guess that companies who are here today would find a need here. So, and we, as I mentioned, we are constantly chatting with the industry. So if a large group of potential employer would say, hey, I would love to hire your students, and I'd love them to know Cloud Foundry, we could add a module that might be part of the curriculum or kind of on the side of the curriculum, and get students to learn this tool so that they can find a job easily. And it might take perhaps a few days or a week for them just to learn this. So I totally see a possibility of adding Cloud Foundry to the curriculum.
So I want to ask you one more question.
Yeah.
Just sort of the flip side of what we were just talking about. Instead of preparing students to learn Cloud Foundry, how do you prepare Cloud Foundry for new developers? And do you have suggestions for the community, the Cloud Foundry community, in terms of, what would make it easier? Mm-hmm.
So, I think the Cloud Foundry team is doing an amazing job of being aware about how to welcome newcomers to the industry. And I think, with this, I think that now the industry started to realize that we need to open our mind in terms of who could be a software engineer. Most software engineers look like me, white dude with a beard. That's really bad, right? And Holberton is definitely trying to tackle that, and to inspire and attract and train minorities are in tech industry, so women, people of color, And so I think it's also the role of this type of community to be welcoming to newcomers in the tech industry and also people who are underrepresented in their community, and to inspire them, because if you go on a company website or technology website and you only see white dude, right, and a woman or person of color goes there, they will be like, I don't belong to this community, nobody looks like me. Or if you are a beginner also, so I think being aware that the whole chat was about how we lack, of software engineer and cloud engineer. Well, there is a lot of people who could be interested. We need to be welcoming, and I don't know the Cloud Foundry user as much. I'm quite in touch with the Cloud Foundry. I know what the Cloud Foundry, I would say, voice is about, and I know they are very aware about this. But for the wider audience, I think that would be my advice.
So it's not a feature of the software; it's just the pipeline. It's making sure that it's open and welcoming, the community is open and welcoming, and that you're bringing in
absolutely
a diverse.
I mean, the software, it's code. The software is non-biased, non-discriminative. I mean, we could go to another topic, but the tool itself will not. But I think ultimately, I don't see people not using Cloud Foundry because of software, but because the community is not. Whether it's company using these tools, right, or the community of the tool itself. And but I, at least for the Cloud Foundry, I think it's fine, but I think it's more about people, less about software.
Yeah. Great. Well, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Libby.
It's great to talk to you today.
Thank you.
Yeah.
The Cloud Foundry Foundation is our sponsor for these podcasts that we did from the Cloud Foundry Summit in Boston, Massachusetts. Cloud Foundry is used by enterprises around the globe to automate, scale, and manage cloud applications throughout their life cycle. Learn more about Cloud Foundry at cloudfoundry.org. Listen to more episodes of the New Stack Bakers at thenewstack.io/podcast. Please rate and review us on iTunes, like us on YouTube, and follow us on SoundCloud. Thanks for listening, and see you next time.